If you're an IT or a tech leader and you're currently active in the job market and are looking to build your resume, well, then this step-by-step guide is the only thing that you would ever need. So with that said, let's get started. The tech job market in general tends to be very, very competitive, especially for leadership roles. You can see like within the same day of a role being posted, there are hundreds of candidates that apply. There's thousands of applicants by the time like you probably get to apply. And because of that, that causes a lot of doubts and concerns in job seekers' heads. Many questions arise around the area of resume, right? Is that resume a real problem? Why I'm not getting the interviews? Is my resume showcasing me in the right light? Does it have the right keywords? Is it passing the ATS systems, right? And then how do I condense my 15, 20 years of experience, 2 decades of experience into just like two-page document, right? How do I showcase my leadership skills and executive presence on the resume? And do I need to tailor my resume for every role? Then these are all the valid concerns. And well, then ultimately, all of these are arising because in most cases, the resume that you have built is not working and you want to make a really sharp version of it. So that said, that's what we'll cover. But first, we also want to talk about what does not help is a lot of these so-called career coaches or resume writing services, they spread so many lies around like, hey, that will get you past the ATS. We build a resume that is optimized for ATS, right? Or you fix this one thing, or you follow that template and that gets your resume noticed, and then you start getting interviews. They make all of these bold promises. The reality is that it is a myth. And as shocking as it might be, we talk to hundreds of recruiters, and I have also gathered some posts from some of the more revered recruiters in the market who clearly say like, hey, ATSs are just filing systems. There's no such bot that actually matches your keyword and like kind of parses the resume and then just sees if that resume is a match or not. No, the actual rejection that happens is done by recruiters. There's no bot reading your resume and there's no bot matching the keywords. It's a myth perpetuated especially by these cheap resume writing companies or career coaches who want to make a quick buck off of job seekers, and then it is a believable myth, and that's why they perpetuate it, and it serves them and it serves the job seekers because also it gives them some sort of hope or reason that like, hey, there are some things that I can still do that would help me get the results. Well, there are things you can do, but those are not optimizing for keywords. And so very few folks in our line of businesses would agree that while resumes are important in your job search, they are not the most important thing. And while a bad resume can hurt your chances, fixing a resume alone will not guarantee you a landed job. And I say that as we make resumes as part of our services. Let's first understand what a great resume should do and where is its real place. So, a great resume, it has four key functions. It hooks the attention of the reader. So if somebody stumbles upon the resume, it within the first couple of seconds, it should hook the attention, make it worth reading. It controls a narrative about you in a way that fits the needs and understanding of the hiring manager or the recruiter. And then, because you are a fit, it makes the reader curious, right? Hey, I'm only going to be curious about a particular profile if they happen to be a fit. And it gives them that aha moment in their search, making them think like, hey, this is the person I'm looking for. I want to learn more about them. And then it's lucid enough that it gets read easily. And for a recruiter, it answers a couple of questions, especially for recruiters. Why it's important is because recruiters are the initial gatekeepers, as well as recruiters are technical buyers in this equation, which means they are just like checking boxes off. So for a recruiter, it answers whether or not you have the years of experience that they require, whether or not you have a specific experience. For example, cloud migration, there's a particular kind of like application they want it deployed, and do you have that experience or not? Things like that. Whether you belong to a kind of industry that they are considering, whether you have experience with a particular function. Like, hey, if I'm looking for data engineering leaders, I'm not going to waste my time with folks who have done only data science alone, right? Are they looking for specific hard skills, right? Have you built a software engineering team? Have you driven an M&A due diligence process from the IT standpoint, right? And lastly, they want to check for whether or not you're on the right location. So all of these things should be highlighted on the resume. Again, we'll show you where the all of the places are. And but equally important to understand, and this is where most job seekers get this wrong, we need to understand what a resume is not for. It's not a tool to sell yourself. It's a tool to market you, right? Selling happens in an interview, and that's a big difference. So what it does is, if somebody stumbles upon your resume, the only job of that resume is to convert that interest. Somebody perhaps had that interest, so they clicked on your resume, they opened it, and then they are reading through it. So the job of the resume is to convert that interest into a first interview. That's it, right? It's not a tool for generating that interest in the first place. Just because you have a great resume does not mean a lot of people will be looking at your resume right away, right? That just does not happen. There are different things that you can do so that more people and more relevant people can look onto your resume, but it by itself would not do that. I mean, it's pretty straightforward, right? Neither it is just because somebody reads your resume that means that they're going to give you a job. So what happens is people, this is where the real problem is, right? While designing the resume, if you keep that above principle in mind, you want to give them just enough information that helps them satiate enough curiosity about you, that they, hey, I want to learn more. I know this person at a base level is a good fit. I want to learn more about this person, so I want to give them a call, right? That's the job of the word. So that means we do not want to write a thesis, nor do we want to create like such a broad resume that tries to catch everything else. So that's it. I want to also call out a couple of common resume mistakes that you would find. And if you're thinking like, hey, when is the resume guide going to start this, you can jump onto that timestamp that's already linked. But one of the common things, and this is important, why these mistakes are I'm presenting, because like we say how to build the resume, and yet people over and over make these mistakes, and unless like shown with examples, they still move forward with that. So with that said, let's get into it. Now, one of the things that the most common one is people make keep it vague, right? So in this example, if you notice, like how like nothing specific could be told about this person, right? Instead, like they're just asking for a role where like, hey, I'm seeking a challenging position that leverages my technical expertise, business acumen, project management to drive profitability. Like, okay, but around what? And then all of these things like, hey, you are proficient in this, you're experienced with access management, you have extensive experience in business IT and project management. Yes, all of that is true, but where's the evidence? What like says who? What claim, what substance are you giving to bolster those claims, right? Another mistake that we see is along the lines of the first one, is like this is a catch all approach, right? It lacks crucial things like, hey, which industry you belong to, what specific function you belong to. Instead, they just are filled with random buzzwords like, hey, I have 17 years of experience leading IT teams to new height of innovation and efficiency. What is that innovation? What kind of efficiencies are we talking about? If I'm dedicated to creating environments where teams can thrive, innovation can flourish, if you just read through the summary, this could literally be said about any other IT leader. It does not differentiate you. If anything, it helps, it blends you with the noise. Another one is like a lot of the times people make these generic claims again without any substance behind it, or they put these word soup around like, hey, regulatory compliance, software product development. Does not tell me much. It's just a bunch of words. Or when sometimes in the experience section they would write their responsibilities like as if like I'm interested in like what job duties were you doing. No, I if I'm looking for a leader, I want to see what needles did they move. So I want metrics, I want tangible things. But sometimes then people put those tangible things in weird percentages, so leading to a 15% improvement in goal achievement. For example, over here, if we look, 15% of what was the goal? That's just like random percentages also do not help, right? 20% increase in revenue could mean 1 million to 1.2 million, or 100 million to 120 million. So massive difference there. And then lastly, one of the things is like adding infographics for the sake of just like adding something. So in this one, and by the way, this is a typical format. Like this is written by a company that claims to be the which actually is world's leading resume writing company. They say like, hey, by volume of the customer served, that they are number one. And one of the things I wanted to point out is like these are all vanity metrics that people chase. Like, hey, I want to work with the world's biggest company, and like who you are really working with, somebody who built this resume, like of all the weird things that were in this resume, which like what does this visionary customer centric analytical does not tell me much about that anyway. There's this weird infographic, like if you're analytical, what's that got to do with motivation, and what's the circle going on? And if you're strategic, what's that got to do with training or adaptability with creativity? Like God knows, like it's an infographic only the person who designed it can understand. Like it's just taking valuable real estate in the on the resume. And if anything, what that tells is like you cannot convey your value clearly. It's doing the opposite of the work. So avoid these common mistakes. With that said, like having provided you with some bad examples, the things that you should avoid, let's look into the architecture of what you actually must have on a resume that puts your, makes it a great resume. Here are a few things, right? So a resume must have a header with a key contract information so that they can get in touch with you. It must have a career summary that summarizes your entire career, of course, in a few, like in less than a minute. Somebody can peek, like they can, it hooks the attention, it controls the narrative. It, like, somebody can read it under a sentence, under a minute, the entire career summary. And then there's professional experience, of course. Therefore, more than 10 years of or ago experience, you want to keep it under the previous professional experience. Then you want to have an education section where, of course, graduation dates are not necessary, and certifications if it's relevant certifications that you have for the role. And we'll revisit all of these. So the first section you must have, and in this order, like have all of these components, is the header, right? So you want to have your name, you want to have your location. You don't, please do not put your full address, because like oftentimes like you don't know where your resume is going, you don't want to give that information away, right? So just the city and the state. If you for whatever reason are willing to relocate, then please definitely mention that you're willing to relocate, you're open to relocate. That helps the recruiter not reject you but now that, like, just based off of location, right? You have your phone number, you have your email, and you have your clickable LinkedIn profile, so that way they can cross check you, as well as you get to know, like, has the recruiter viewed your profile or not. If you have some major critical certifications or an MBA or things that worth mentioning, you can put it right next to your name, and that works. But like, do have these information because it helps recruiter quickly and efficiently reach out to you. That said, section 2 is career summary. Now this is the most important section, and please pay attention here more specifically, because this is the first thing somebody will see on your resume, and within 6 to 8 seconds it helps them make a decision whether or not this resume is relevant. So adding those buzzwords, keeping vagueness, or like not having any differentiation, none of that will help you. Like, if the career summary, if anything, must have a polarizing effect. It's either a really strong fit, right? It show, like, if you are a fit for the role, then it must show that you are a really strong fit within very quickly. Or if you're not a fit, then this must look like absolute white noise, like, hey, this is irrelevant, right? It should not attempt any catch-all narrative. Which, that said, with this career summary, you get to control the narrative about yourself right off the bat. And the best narrative is that we want to focus on things what they would like to see. When I say they, these are the recruiters, these are the hiring managers, not what I would like to show. Right? It's not about me, it's about them. And so the key to making a precise and irresistible career summary lies in keeping it precise, to the point, hyper relevant to the role only. Keep it factual, keep it concise, give them, and that's exactly what we are going to see in the next step. Now, here's a structure I love. Of course, there's no one right way to do it. You might have better ways as well. But what we have seen to work really well is we want to provide a short paragraph that summarizes all of the key things that they should know about you. And then we want to have some bullets that substantiate those claims that we are making. So these are providing metrics, tangible things, the needle movers, and all of that. And with that, what to include in your story. And this is, it's a handful slide, so we'll go step by step. So when I say story, by the way, what I mean is this paragraph part, right? What should I include in story is, what kind of a tech leader am I? Is it software engineering? Is it product management, data and analytics, right? A lot of people try to say they are technology leaders, technology executives. That does not mean anything. have a definition about your role. Even if you think that you do multiple things, chances are you can be fit into one or two of these categories. We have seen that like there we are yet to find somebody who does not fit in one of these categories. I can rest assure you, right? Unless you are the CIO or the CTO, in which case you're handling multiple functions, then that of course speaks for itself, right? That's it. We want to talk about how many years of experience and how many specific years of experience. So perhaps like if they are looking for, hey, we want somebody with 5+ years of healthcare experience. Yeah, I have 20+ years of experience with 5+ years of healthcare experience. You want to call those kind of things out if you're of course making applications for those kinds of roles. What kind of specific industry experience do you have, or environment experience? So you can slice and dice it by industry, like, hey, I come from the healthcare background or financial services background, retail, e-commerce, whatever, right? Also you can slice and dice it by size of companies. I've been in a mid-size fast-paced environment. I have been in a large company, large complex IT environment. I have been in a consulting environment, right? Whatever that environment factor is, do include that. And then you want to talk about your capabilities. These could be things that you have built, right? A product, a platform, setting up new infrastructure, right? A digital transformation framework, whatever that is. Who did you serve? So these are your customers. These could be internal departments. These could be external customers, right? It could be external B2C customers. It could be external B2B customers, right? Whatever your product you built, who was it serving? Who did it cater to? And then did you change or transform something in terms of people, process, or technology? So, right, hey, you grew the team, you implemented DevOps methodology. That would be an example of a process. You grew the team by 2x. That would be example of people. If you migrated to a different ERP, that would be an example of changing technology. And then you want to call out your leadership experience. So this includes the size and nature of the teams that you have handled. The nature simply means here is like, hey, whether it was a global, nearshore, multi-geographic, cross-functional, whatever that's how the adjective that you would use for the team. And lastly, any specific skills or experience that are very much relevant to the role. So, for example, if you have done M&A due diligence and you're applying for a role where that requires, like, hey, we are a private equity firm, we want an IT leader who has gone through these multiple M&A due diligence process. Yeah, that would be worth mentioning. If they are looking for somebody with project management experience, yeah, definitely mention that. So these are the skills and experience that are in line with the role. So that said, if you're feeling overwhelmed, by the way, about like, hey, this kind of like jogged so many ideas for me, don't worry about it. Just take a pen and a piece of paper, just start writing about the things, make headlines about the things that like, hey, these are all the things I can include, because then we can trim the fat from there. Typically what I like to do is like I look for some 8 to 10 job descriptions that are very much aligned with the target roles our clients are looking to land. And then I see like, hey, what are the repetitive themes around those? Hey, like in this particular one, they are wanting for a product leader who has led 0 to 1 products, right? If that's a repetitive theme, then I say like, okay, what are 0 to 1 products that you have launched and served? Okay, yeah, let's bring those up. So that way the job descriptions will kind of guide like what kind of things are relevant for that kind of a role. And of course, from there, use your best judgment in terms of like, hey, what are some of the facts would I like the person reading this to know if I were to give them a 60-second pitch, if I'm right? Or if let's just say if I'm the hiring manager, within 60 seconds, what can a candidate tell me about this, about themselves, that would make me seem a fit for that role? And then I include all of those information. So that said, with that, like if we have taken out all of those variables, here's a quick structure that you can use. You can use some variation of the structure, but here I'm saying like, hey, I'm the type of leader, so I'm a product management leader with 20+ years of experience driving 0 to 1 product development for a specific kind of products or in a B2B SaaS environment. I drove the transformation of the sales digital transformation framework product suite. I am adept at driving product stories, like building, getting business buy-in, all of those experience skills that are in line with the role. So here's this structure that I'm using. We use some variation of that. Here's an example. You can pause the video and look at it. And then comes the bullet part. So remember, like we talked about the career summary over here. There's the story part, and then these are the bullets that we are going to use to substantiate the claims. Now, here's a really good way to do that is we'll talk about what kind of bullets to include, and what the structure that we use is you want to talk about the problem, action, and result, right? So the key problems we solved, what was the action taken to solve that problem, and what was the result it achieved, right? So here's my exhaustive list of, and when I say exhaustive, like I am yet to come across a bullet that does not speak to one of these points and still not relevant. So if you just like cover these points, and of course you go look for the job description, see like, or like go look at your career and see like what all things speak to that. Because again, the bullets that we are mentioning, it must be a needle mover. It's not a responsibility. It must be a needle mover for the business. And if you boil it down to the fundamentals, there are these needle movers, right? One is, did you build, transform, or implemented something, right? So that's the experience. The second one is, did with you doing something for the business, did it grow the revenue or decrease the costs for the business? Especially if you're mentioning these kind of metrics, definitely quantify the dollar value. If it brought some sort of efficiency or productivity enhancement, or it could have improved the posture of the company in the industry. Like, hey, we implemented this system which helped us win PayPal as the customer for our platform because we had SRE practice that none of our competitors had, right? So, like, it's improving the company's posture. Or you want to talk about like the leadership experience, the people leadership experience, and we'll come to that, like how to frame that. Now, here are some of the examples, because like of course once you go through these you would be like, hey, in multiple roles I drove the revenue growth, or in multiple, there are, I can think of multiple examples where like I improved the company's posture, right? How do I consolidate those things? That was one of the common questions that a lot of people have. Here I have provided examples. I won't go too much deeper into the site, but you can you can club the two experiences together. So for example, if you work in an e-commerce company and there were two different roles, where in one you added $25 million using recommender systems and a $50 million using customer segmentation things to the top line for the company, well then you can consolidate it as such by saying like, hey, deliver multiple e-commerce enhancements solutions like recommended engines and customer segmentation to achieve an overall revenue growth for $75 million, right? That's an added aggregated amount. I mean, similarly you can mention both of those things. You can mention multiple but highlight one of those things. I can pause at this page and see these examples. Another thing about like how to build those people leadership bullets here is, there are two formats that I use. So you want to talk about what kind of teams you led, what was the size of those teams you led, what did you do the teams? Those, did you build and lead the teams? Did you just lead the teams? Did you grow the teams? Things of that nature. How much did you grow by? And then you can also talk about, by doing so, by leading this kind of team or by building this kind of team, what were you focusing on? So like, hey, we were focusing on scaling the platform, we were focusing on building, shipping out a new SaaS product, something of that nature. And so there are some examples, again you can have a look at that. And then there are some, like if it's relevant to your role or the kind of industry that you are in, compliances are important, right? And then for that, you will be talking about, if you see these kind of things being mentioned in the job descriptions multiple time, and of course you have experience with that, then of course do that. Here I have put in an example of that was relevant to like infrastructure and secure cyber security kind of role, where like, hey, these are the, you want to do name drop these specific compliances or regulatory requirements, because like that is key for recruiters to look for it. So here's a really, so I want to preface this by saying, if you read through this career summary, if you were looking for a data engineering leader, you would find all of the relevant things, by the way, right? And this simple, you can see there's no fancy formatting, there's like straight up words. I just very concisely under if you read through it, it would, you could read it under a minute. And I have used clear language, and like the metrics are on point. This resume, by the way, landed 50 interviews for one of our clients at director and VP level, and I mean, of course, they landed 5 job offers towards the end, but and that was not attributed to the resume, but like this resume was contributory to landing them 50 interviews. My point is, it can be just as simple. It just needs the right elements, and it works. That said, let's move on to the next important section. That's the professional experience section. Here are a couple things we want to have. So we want to have the name of the company, the city it was in. We want to have clear dates along with the months. So you don't need to have dates, but like months and years are fine. And you want to have a nice clean structure, right? An important thing here is have a company description, especially if it's not a household brand like Coca-Cola or Apple, right? And have a role description that helps put the context for everything else that you do. And then, of course, you want to have the bullets. So there, with that said, what to include in company description? We like just like if you were to provide uh, context around the kind of company you were in, and what product and service does the company provide, who does it serve, how many customers, in what regions, how many employees, what's the revenue, things of that nature. So that helps a recruiter or quickly understand like, oh, he worked in such kind of an environment. Here are a few examples, right? And then what to include in the role summary. This summary, by the way, is this part over here. In case we missed it, it's this part. It's the paragraph right before you start writing the bullets for the resume. So this is where you put a high level broad strokes core charter of what you did in a role, right? Again, keep it high level. We don't want to write a lengthy paragraph, and it is a short overview that provides just the context, right? We want to talk about who brought you in or who did you report to. It helps set like the perspective into where do you stand in the organization. So reporting to the CTO or handpicked by the SVP of engineering, that's going to be an example for this. How big of a team did you lead? One second. How big of a team did you lead? Did you coach someone or grow someone in a team? So that's speaking to your people leadership things. What kind of functions did you serve? So like, hey, I was involved with operations and service management. Example is that. What did you build? So at a very high level, you say like, hey, we were doing XYZ. I was brought into the role to handle this team to build XYZ. Or like, how did the role progress for you? Like, hey, I was later expanded scope to include this as well. And I handled such kind of budget. So at a very high level, you're mentioning the things that are relevant. Here's an example. Now let's come to the bullet part. This bullet part is very similar to what we learned in the career summary section. And in that, one of the things I like to do, especially here, is I call out whatever that bullet is about as like put a 2 3 letter or 2 3 words of summary for that bullet, and I bold it out. So like if I'm a technology leader and I'm looking for, hey, what kind of work have you done in QA automation, it immediately draws my eyes towards that and I read through that bullet, and it just makes sense. It's just like much better structure wise. Then you want to have previous professional experience for anything beyond 10 to 12 plus years of experience, right? Do not like anything beyond that, it's irrelevant. Do not add details around that. Even if you have it from your past resumes, you can just like leave them. There's no point. A lot of the times we had to explain our clients. They would say like, oh no, but like this 15 years ago I worked with Pepsi and it was a really big customer and I really want to mention that experience. Like, no matter, like you just like, you may have personally worked with the CEO of Pepsi at that point, could care, like, anybody could care less right now. And why that's important is what happened like in technology, what happened 15 years ago is no longer relevant, right? And if your highlight truly is something that, like, if the peak of your career was 15 years ago, and something terribly wrong happened right now, like you're not at the peak right now, which you should be at the peak right now. If they are looking to hire their next executive, they're looking for people in their peak right now. So if you're having to talk about something 15 years ago, that's already defeating the purpose. That said, so shorten anything beyond that, and then you can present it in this format where you're writing the title, the company, and the dates of employment. And actually mention it. Sometimes people, unless like you have more than 40 years of experience, then you want to kind of like I can take that experience out because it's kind of dating me over here. Sometimes like some of the older folks, being not being ageist here, but some of the older folks do use older practices like, hey, additional experience is available upon request. Don't do that. Mention everything as much as you can, and then keep it in the previous professional experience section. Similarly, education, you don't necessarily need the dates, unless if you don't want to date yourself here. If you do not have education, you can skip that. To be honest, like for tech leadership roles, education is not as important and as much as it is for entry level roles. And then of course, if you have any relevant certifications, you can add those over here. That's it. Hope this was helpful. There are some considerations I like to say with the resume design. As you would have seen some of the later examples that I've shown, it's pretty straightforward formatting, right? Boring resumes are the best. We have spoken to hundreds and hundreds of recruiters on this matter. Everybody says the same consistent thing, like, hey, I don't need some fancy infographics. I don't need some like r- bars or rates of skills or like designed in the branding of my company. So like if you're applying for Google, like the resume is filled with Google colors and all of that. That's just like super not helpful. Like keep it plain, simple, straightforward. Do not use too many colors. Font choice, definitely I like Calibri. You can use Times New Roman. It's like more typewriter style, but like I like Calibri a lot. Do not go below font size 10. Ideal is 10.5 to 11. Like it still keeps it precise. And then yeah, keep it plain and simple. That said, resumes, like I said, a good resume might get you an interview. It won't get you a job. It's one piece of the puzzle. Now that said, we offer a complete done for you service for all of your job search effort. If you like this video, say like, hey, I want to build my resume like this, and I want you guys to take care of everything. That's literally what we do. We'll position you in a narrow market, build your resume, LinkedIn profile. We'll find and apply for the hiring managers, no, apply for the right roles on your behalf. We'll also find the hiring managers along with their contact, and we kind of research the role to write a very compelling outreach to the hiring manager. Actually, these two part, like finding the hiring manager and writing a very compelling email outreach to them, is the one that gets most of our clients the attention that I was talking to you about, right? The interest that it generates. This generates the interest, and then the resume converts that interest into a booked interview. And then we take care of all of these processes for you. If you're wanting to learn more about our services, you can visit wolfmentoring.com. That said, I hope this was helpful. All the best.